Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Before we start, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. But if you stay, there might just be some cookies in your near future. Maybe. Alright, our first story today comes to us from A Horse Has No Name. Start using icebreakers to talk to customers to get them to buy stuff? You got it. Let's jump right in. This story is over a decade old, back when I was fresh out of college and dedicated to doing nothing important for as long as possible. I worked for an electronics store, a big one, and I lasted there for about 18 months before I realized I was wasting my time on garbage pay that I ended up blowing on games and movies. My manager, Bob, but not really, was a pretty decent guy, and I never had too many complaints about him, although he was wasted at that particular store because he was a pretty good manager. I could tell he was getting a lot of flack from the GM, Jim, but not really, because home theater, me, sales were stagnant, clarification good but not growing, and not hitting our ridiculous quotas. I worked in the mornings until afternoons when there were maybe 10 people visiting the department in total, and you could tell that 8 of them were just watching TV, waiting for their spouse's cell phone plan to be activated. Unfortunately, since there was so little foot traffic, management's decision was to drill into us how to use every marketing and customer manipulation tactic to encourage people to buy things. I was a good salesperson, and I could sell the crap out of home theater using tactics such as getting customers to use their imagination about their options, or presenting new options in ways they hadn't considered. I listened. I learned about their needs and what they were looking for, and they frequently left the store with something completely different than what they thought they needed. I recall that the number of returns I had was so small that I could probably count them on both hands over 18 months. I, however, was completely effing disinterested in marketing tactics, sales tactics, or manipulating customers for upsells. This meant upselling or changing how I communicated with them to speak their language in a way that marketing showed increased sales, but was blatantly manipulative. F that. So when Jim tells Bob about their new push to encourage customers to buy things they normally wouldn't buy, he knows I'm going to be a challenge, but he does a pretty good job at trying to convince me. He comes to me and we have a floor meeting, and he asks me to try breaking the ice with the customers by chatting them up a little about topics unrelated to their viewing habits, home theater, etc., to get them to like me enough to want to make a purchase. Malicious compliance time. I was ready to quit and move on, and I was no longer interested in playing the game. He wanted me to try breaking the ice with people, so I started flirting with all the customers. Black, white, guy, girl, rich, not rich, old, not old. Everyone got a smile and a compliment about their outfit, and I'd compare them to a celebrity they reminded me of if possible. I was good at it too. I kept completely mild and inoffensive, our uniforms were blah, and I wasn't really trying, but on more than one occasion, a bored older woman or housewife gave me their phone number. Our overall numbers started going down because I was busy chatting with customers than making sales. So eventually, I got hit with a secret shopper and the jig was up. Bob finds out about this from Jim, and I can hear him laughing from across the store before coming to my department to ask me to go to the back of the store for a private meeting. He wrote me up for inappropriate communications with customers. I told him I wouldn't sign the write-up report because I received no directives saying I couldn't flirt with customers. I wasn't violating the employee handbook, I made sure, and I never said anything that was offensive or sexual, even though several customers took it in that direction. But more importantly, I was given my 2 weeks notice, but if the write-up was a deal breaker, I could leave now. Bob was sad that I was leaving but understood. Jim was pissed that I was leaving because I was a good earner, even though the department goals were ridiculous. There's not a lesson from this for managers out there, so don't read into it. I was an acerbic jackbutt. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Series Hybrid. It says, Management 101. Set impossible goals so those lazy bees try harder. Set your employees up to fail so they feel bad about failing to meet your impossible goals. Never admit that anything is management's fault. Always flip it so any problems are somehow the employee's fault. Sit back and watch all that sweet money flow in. Gee, this reminds me of a former manager of mine who thought that everything he did was the way it was supposed to be and there was no other ways. In fact, I don't think we were even allowed to think. I haven't said this for a very long time in any of the KCC videos, but screw you, Rick. Getting back to this story and management in general, I think that there's a problem because if they're not actually on the front lines working with the customers every day, then they really can't know what to do to make those sales better. You really need to get your staff and find out what's working for them, bring them together, have a town hall meeting, find out what's working for them and implement their strategies. Because if you're not the one out there selling to the customer, how do you know what's going to work? Our next story today comes to us from Outlandishness1681. As you wish, let's jump right in. This happened a couple or 3 decades ago in the military. I was in charge of the squadron budget and made sure all unit expenditures were proper, right funds account, and funds were available. I was also to make sure that our budget lasted the whole fiscal year. We got a new commander who was the worst micromanager I saw in my 20-year career. I made an appointment for my initial budget brief and proceeded to lay out our current expenditures, funding available, and the plans to spend it all by the end of the fiscal year. My new commander then tells me that he wants oversight on every penny spent in the squadron. I said I could do that, but I needed some clarification. He said very condescendingly, "Did you not hear me, Sergeant? I said every penny. I will approve every penny spent in this squadron before it is spent." I said, "Yes, sir. Do you want me to send paper requests or email them to you?" He said email would be sufficient and dismissed me. I knew exactly what to do. I called all the bosses who ran the different shops and told them what the commander had said and that I had no choice but to comply. None of them were happy, and a couple of them caught the tone in my voice and figured out what I was doing. I even told the squadron chief what was going to happen, and he told me that he would have my back. So I took all 27 spending accounts down to $0 available. Even the most critical aircraft parts couldn't be ordered until they sent me an email, which I forwarded to the commander. He never once responded. It took 2 weeks for everything to hit the fan. It was longer than I thought it would take, and I was starting to get nervous. We were in a staff meeting, and the commander was pissed. He had just gotten his butt chewed by the colonel because of all the broke airplanes waiting on parts to be bought. He turned to the first flight chief and asked him why he had so much equipment that wasn't getting fixed. The chief said with a straight dead poker face, "Sergeant won't approve us buying any parts." The commander whipped his head toward me and angrily asked what the problem was. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Sir, I sent those requests to you 2 weeks ago." You could see the color drain from his face as he quickly looked down. "We'll talk about this after the meeting." I kept my straight face, and I swear that I heard more than one muffled chuckle from the chiefs at the conference table. When the meeting was over, the commander told me to meet him in his office. The chief that threw me under the bus winked at me and smiled. I walked in right behind the boss and reported formally. We normally only do this if we were in trouble or getting praise, but this guy insisted on it from everyone every time. "Mike," apparently I was now on a first name basis, "you seem to have a pretty firm grasp on the budget and what the flights need. I think you can approve the normal day-to-day stuff and just bring the big things to me." "Yes, sir," was all I could say without busting out in laughter. Every request was approved and ordered within an hour, and I was never questioned again. Now, OP added a little edit onto the end of the story. It says, "Postscript, Chief equals Chief Master Sergeant, the highest enlisted rank in the US Air Force." I found out later that the chiefs had all gotten together and decided to go along with my idea. They could have stopped it immediately, but decided to teach the commander a lesson. Somehow, the colonel that chewed my commander's butt had gotten word of what was going on and decided enough was enough, but he still didn't let on that he knew the real reason. Apparently, he thought my commander needed some education too. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Ogioni. It says, Regardless of the branch, it's the NCOs who actually run things. A good officer learns this early in his career and knows that when a sergeant says, "Are you sure you want to do that, sir?" that alarm should go off and he should seriously reconsider what he's doing. I think the same thing goes for management as it does in a military setting. All of the people that make the day-to-day decisions and do this day in and day out every single day of their working/military careers, which I guess is still a working career, they know exactly what they're doing, for the most part. They might need a little bit of oversight, but fun fact, if you let them do their jobs, they'll do them better than you might think. Our next story today comes to us from Zigster23. Do you trust us? Let's jump right in. A little light on malicious compliance, but there were definite consequences. I've worked in IT at universities most of my career. Several years ago, I transferred to a new university to try something new. I immediately regretted it for several reasons. One, the entire department was under review from HR for low morale. A survey was sent to the staff to gauge morale. I learned later that the VP had been demoted because of it before I was hired. 2, the new director barely spoke to me when hired and had her door shut for almost 3 straight days. 3, I was asked to consider which of my staff I wanted to replace or fire to better help with the new software implementation. Later learned that they had several lawsuits for wrongful dismissal. 4, I had 2 staff that lived 90 minutes away that frequently asked to work from home during inclement weather. I was told to be strict about this and deny their requests. Of course, if my staff called or texted the director, she would cave and let them. Ugh. 5, my director received a promotion, executive director, and a consultant was hired as our new director. She was a consultant with the very company whose software we were implementing. Foreshadowing. Now comes the craziness. The VP brought in a group therapist to meet with all of the managers. We learned about team building and that a good team has a foundation of trust. We had several managerial meetings after this where our old director and the VP would grill the mid-level managers about trust. We were asked bluntly, "Who doesn't trust us?" Everybody was afraid to speak up. My anxiety was now through the roof. I had to be put on medication just to help me get out the front door to go to work. I couldn't quit because I needed health insurance for my family, pre-Obamacare. Now comes the malicious compliance, not too malicious. They continued to berate us about how trust was key over several meetings. Who doesn't trust us? I finally raised my hand. You asked, so I'll answer you. I said, I don't trust you. I've been in meetings where you've belittled and made fun of our staff in front of vendors and clients. Who knows what is being said about me when I'm not in the room? You have unrealistic expectations and the lowest morale of any place I've worked. Trust needs to be earned. They were a bit shocked that I had answered them. I was fired within 2 weeks. I was well liked by my colleagues, which meant that whatever trust still was out there crumbled immediately. They replaced me with a consultant from the same software company. He was fired within a month. Trust was now completely abandoned. Within the year, 75% of my department either quit or retired. Thankfully, I had already started interviewing for positions before being fired. I found one within 2 months and have been there for 10 years. Best job I've ever had. Unfortunately, they're still up to the same shenanigans. Just recently, 10 plus years later, the university fired the whole IT division and outsourced them to the same software and consulting company. The whole university is in financial hot water, having to cut 14 academic programs. Yeah, the problem wasn't in the IT department, the problem was the organization of that place altogether. If they were having to cut 14 academic problems, well, the issues in that place go right up to the top, I can guarantee you that. OP, I'm glad you were able to get out, even if it was forced, and find a better job that you've been in for a very long time now. Congrats on that. Our last story today comes to us from Sad Day St. Pete. You want every single denied claim filled out as if it was approved? You got it. Let's jump right in. I worked as a claims adjuster for a few years that did claims on anything with wheels or propellers. Automotive, RV, motorcycle, ATV, boats, jet skis, we did it all. Doing automotive claims were our bread and butter. and easily documented in full because it's easy to find part numbers, prices, and labor times. Now, RVs on the other hand, they were a B. There weren't any industry standardized part numbers, several labor guides all having extremely vague and vastly different times for the same repair, etc. Everyone hated getting an RV claim because it took forever to gather all the info and enter it into the claim. Same goes for boats because we got one of those maybe twice a month. You would literally have to Google parts websites and attempt to find a similar part with a price close to what they were asking if it was going to be approved. One of the good things about the process was all of the contracts, regardless of vehicle, had very definitive reasons a claim would be denied. Example, covered under manufacturer warranty, listed as excluded in the contract, owner negligence, stuff like that. Whenever one of those came up, you thanked the old JC because you could just take down their estimate and deny it without verifying their estimate. Now, our VP, the highest manager in the building that actually reviewed our work, was the classic, I don't like to do the work, I just supervise type. Then it happened. One day, a denied claim, rightfully so, was elevated all the way up to him thanks to constant bitching by a Karen who was at a large dealership. The VP decided to approve it anyway, even though it was cut and dry, not covered. The problem? The adjuster didn't verify the parts and labor estimate before denying it, as it was about as clear as day it was to be denied. The VP had to spend, God forbid, 5 minutes verifying 2 parts and a labor time. He flew off the handle at this and after the fact called a department-wide meeting stating that from now on, regardless of the claim, we had to verify every part and labor cost before denying. When asked why, he even said with a laugh that he didn't like to do work but had to on that claim, so now it is on us. Did I mention the job was ran like a call center, with calls constantly in queue from repair facilities? We had calls in queue non-stop, from clock in to clock out. If we weren't answering them quickly enough, we'd get an email that said, "Calls backing up, watch the queue." That was the most work he wanted to do. I think you can see where this is going. In comes the malicious compliance. From that point on, I made sure to take my time and document every single aspect of every denied claim, regardless of the reason for denial. Diesel F-250 with 20,000 miles needs an entire fuel system replacement that's covered under the factory warranty? Well, I could just take your part numbers down and deny, but not now. Oh, there are 50 part numbers and 4 different labor ops? I'll go ahead and verify those and then deny. Water intrusion into the shocks of this RV, even though it's clearly stated water intrusion isn't covered, I'll gladly take the 20 minutes required to sift through RV parts websites to verify pricing. Oh, and you have a requested labor time? Let me check our 5 labor guides to try to find it. Another 20 minutes gone. The best part was, I would get claims on vehicles and from customers that weren't even ours, but one of our competitors that had a similar name as us. Being the dutiful employee I was, I made sure to create a customer profile for them, a profile for the repair facility, one for their vehicle, and started a claim, fully vetted it, and then informed the facility it was actually our competitor who had the contract, not us. Now they were wasting 20 to 30 minutes on the phone when I already knew it wasn't with us. I verified every effing claim that was denied. I spent more time verifying denied claims than I did approved ones. Our call queue times more than tripled after a couple months. Then, we had to have one-on-one meetings with the VP to discuss why our production was falling. When my meeting came up, he said I went from being the fastest, most productive adjuster to failing below average and asked what was happening. Did I have issues at the office? Issues at home affecting my production? I wanted to smile and laugh, but I stayed as stoic as possible and told him that I remembered how much he hated to do work. So I wanted to make sure every denied claim had every T crossed and I dotted in case it came across his desk. He asked why I was doing it for claims that clearly would never be considered for approval, and I said that I was a lowly adjuster and could never know when he might have to approve an otherwise denied claim, and wanted to do my job to the best of my ability to help him out. I left a couple months later, but was told by a friend who worked there that the VP left the company to pursue other opportunities and was replaced by the awesome manager who I had reported to directly. I guess the dealership started complaining about wasted time on the phone on top of all the queue delays. The complaints finally got sent up to the CEO and out he went. Isn't this classic Manglement 101? Take a system that's working and then improve it so that it takes 3 times as long? Funny, that seems to be a trend in the stories today. Maybe all of the OPs, if they listen to this video, should send a copy of it to their managers so their managers can listen to it and realize just how much of a big idiot they actually are. Oh, I guess that's wishful thinking, but here it is, it's 12:30 a.m. and my brain just went there because sometimes you just gotta stick it back to the managers. Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.